It was left to speculation for most of our time on this planet, but in the modern era and with the extraordinary technological improvements that we have made, one piece of evidence finally became tangible. A satellite photo. The year was 1968. That year, pictures were taken by a satellite orbiting Earth that clearly showed a gaping hole located at the North Pole, which, according to many, is evidence to support the hollow Earth theory. In the early 1970s, ESSA, a project belonging to the Department of Commerce of the United States, gave media access to images of the North Pole taken by the ESSA-7 satellite. One of the photographs showed the North Pole covered by the usual cloud. The other one, however, showed the same area without clouds, revealing a huge hole where the pole was supposed to be located. Little did the team know that these images would awake the interest of researchers around the globe who had already suspected of anomalies at the North Pole. Anomalies that would fuel the research of unidentified flying objects that, according to many, were deeply connected to the North Pole and the hollow Earth theory. But let's back up. Is there a distinct origin story related to the theory? The hollow Earth is a concept proposing that planet Earth is entirely hollow or contains a substantial interior space. But it is a bit more complicated than that. In ancient times, the concept of a subterranean land inside the Earth appeared in mythology, folklore, and legends. This was true for a number of cultures though. For example, the ancient Greeks described it as a dark place filled with the souls of the dead. But many of these early beliefs were metaphorical or mythological in origin. This also includes the Nordic, the Christian hell, and the Jewish Sheol. The idea of a subterranean realm is also mentioned in Tibetan Buddhist beliefs. According to one story from Tibetan Buddhist tradition, there is an ancient city called Shambhala, which is located inside the earth. From there, possibly the first person to scientifically speculate about a hollow earth was none other than Edmund Halley, of Halley's Comet fame. It was proposed in 1692 as a way of explaining anomalous compass readings. Halley's theory is that the planet is a series of nested spherical shells spinning in different directions, all surrounding a central core. In his estimation, based on the readings of the magnetic field and what he knew of the gravitational pull of the Sun and the Moon on the Earth, this model could account for any inaccuracies in his readings of the magnetic fields of the planet. He also posited that the space between each shell may have had luminous atmospheres capable of supporting life. Regardless of where it originated, the model of a hollow Earth managed to grow and survive. In 1818, John Cleves Sims, Jr. published his Circular No. 1, declaring to the world that the Earth is hollow. Sims, a veteran of the War of 1812, soon became the most famous and successful proponent of the hollow Earth theory. His initial vision of the Earth's interior was like a simplified version of Halley's multi-layered model, with the exception that Sims' version included huge holes at the North and South poles, which allowed access to the hidden world inside. These holes, his unique addition to the hollow Earth theory, would even become known as Sims holes. So that provides a little more context to the 1968 photo. But my apologies, however. We do have to jump back to 1946 now, to visit Vice Admiral Richard E. Byrd. Vice Admiral Richard E. Byrd of the U.S. Navy was a distinguished pioneer aviator and polar explorer who flew over the North Pole on May 9, 1926, and he led numerous expeditions to Antarctica as well, including a flight over the South Pole on November 29, 1929. Between 1946 and 1947, he and his team carried out a large-scale operation called High Jump, during which he discovered and mapped 1,390,000 square kilometers of the Antarctic territory. A quote, "There comes a time when the rationality of men must fade into insignificance, and one must accept the inevitability of the truth. I am not at liberty to disclose the following documentation at this writing. Perhaps it shall never see the light of public scrutiny, but I must do duty and record here for all to read one day. In a world of greed and exploitation, mankind can no longer suppress that which is truth. According to Hollow Earth theorists, Byrd met an ancient race underground in the South Pole. According to Byrd's diary, the government ordered him to remain silent. March 11, 1947. I have just attended a staff meeting at the Pentagon. I have stated fully my discovery and the message from the Master. All is duly recorded. The President has been advised. I am now detained for several hours, 6 hours and 39 minutes to be exact. I am interviewed intently by top security forces and a medical team. It was an ordeal. I am placed under strict control via the national security provisions in the United States of America. I am ordered to remain silent in regard to all that I have learned on the behalf of humanity. Incredible. I am reminded that I am a military man and I must obey orders. Some say the American government sent their troops to the South Pole for any evidence of the rumored German base 211. The Nazis were fascinated with anything regarding the Aryan race. They traveled all over the world, including to Antarctica, to learn more of alleged origins. The Germans did make their mark in the South Pole. However, what they have discovered doesn't compare to what Byrd recorded in his diary. For thousands of years, people all over the world have written legends about Agartha, the underground city. So, did Byrd find it? He alleges that he met with the quote-unquote master, the city's leader, who told him of his concerns about the surface world.
Our interest rightly begins just after your race exploded the first atomic bombs over Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan. It was that alarming time that we sent our flying machines to your surface world to investigate what your race had done. You see, we have never interfered before in your race's wars or barbarity. But now we must, for you have learned to tamper with a certain power that is not for your man, mainly that of atomic energy. Our emissaries have already delivered messages to the power of your world, and yet they do not heed.
Apparently, the government knew about Agartha before Byrd. According to the Master, places such as Tibet, the Great Pyramid of Giza, and the North Pole all have tunnels leading to Agartha. The striking issue regarding the validity of his diary entries is that it is dated February of 1947. If it is to be believed that this story covers Byrd's inaugural flight over the North Pole, then one only needs to look at the actual date when he achieved this feat, more than 20 years earlier on May 9, 1926. But what makes this entry so intriguing is that if it is real, could it have potentially been misconstrued from a later mission to Antarctica? Is it actually referring to the notorious Operation High Jump? High Jump was one of the largest operations ever conducted in Antarctica, with over 4,000 men sent to study, map, and reside on the continent for 8 months. The expedition included 13 Navy support ships, an aircraft carrier, helicopters, flying boats, and an array of more traditional aircraft. This expedition, as well as the subsequent Operation Deep Freeze that occurred 8 years later, established an American military presence on Antarctica. So why exactly was there such a rush to facilitate this occupation? Byrd later told a reporter for the Chilean newspaper El Mercurio that his expedition taught him that the U.S. should prepare for the possibility of hostile planes coming from the polar regions. Many took this to be evidence of the flying craft he saw coming from what is believed to have been Agartha. Other speculation regarding Byrd's supposed search for Agartha notes a Nazi presence in Arctic territory, both north and south. It is well documented that the Nazis explored Arctic regions to set up bases and test novel weaponry. But it is also well documented that Hitler and the Nazis were obsessed with the occult. Nazi maps believed to be instructions for reaching Agartha have supposedly been corroborated by a letter from a German U-boat navigator named Karl Unger, who claims U-209 made it to Agartha, and that the Earth is in fact hollow. The letter also mentions the notorious Karl Hochhofer and Rudolf Hess, who he says were correct about the hollow Earth theory. There is ample evidence that the Nazis spent a lot of resources searching for Agartha, seemingly as a last resort for Hitler to escape in case of dire emergencies, somewhat warranting these conspiracies. In fact, the most common diagram of Agartha was drawn by a German scientist in 1935. Evidence also exists to indicate the Nazis may have believed we already lived on the inside of the Earth. Some experiments of the Third Reich show a belief that the Earth was actually concave, and that we reside on the interior of a sphere. In a bizarre 1942 experiment conducted by Nazi scientist Heinz Fischer, a team attempted to observe a British fleet by pointing the lens of their infrared equipment up at a 45-degree angle. They believed that if the Earth was concave, normal rays were refracted off the ocean, but infrared rays were not. Of course, they only saw the sky, but this shows that they believed and searched for evidence of alternative Earth theories. Will we ever find out if there exists an underground civilization below the surface of the Earth? There have been attempts to drill down as far as possible to see what's there, and the Kola super deep borehole made it about 7 miles. The Russian team that led the operation did not find Agartha, although it would likely be much further down. What they did find showed that we really don't know exactly what is down there. Many of our theories were proven wrong, and we learned a lot more about the Earth's crust. For one, there was a layer of basalt known as the Conrad discontinuity, and it was completely missing, while the presence of water was detected where it shouldn't have been. And this just goes to show we don't really know what's down there.